Right now, we want to be joined by the Dispatch's Andrew Egger, and we want to talk about the piece, Andrew, that you wrote. Thanks for being with us here. But first, you just watched that report from Fox 5 Atlanta. Were there any kind of missing details, kind of the nuts and bolts of this story that was first broken by the Daily Beast that you want to touch on first that we didn't get to?
Yeah, I think you got most of it there. The main kind of 1-2 punch being the initial Daily Beast story, which Republicans weren't thrilled to see in the state, but what really sent kind of alarms blaring for a lot of Georgia Republican strategists, people watching the Senate campaign, was Christian Walker, his son, then signing on and not commenting directly on the allegation, but by sort of accusing his father of lying, of violence, of having a lot of dirty laundry that was being aired publicly, kind of lending his credence to kind of the thrust of the allegation. There's a lot of kind of dismay, specifically coming out of the state party and state operatives last night.
You know, Andrew, we've been seeing so many of the comparisons to the Access Hollywood tape back in late October 2016. Then regarding then candidate Donald Trump, are you seeing some of the similar hallmarks there, or is that kind of comparison off base here?
The strategy has certainly been very comparable when it comes to national commentators, when it comes to the people cutting the checks. The Senate Leadership Fund is not pulling any kind of money out of Georgia. There's a lot of commentators today basically saying, what matters is not what happened in his personal life before. What matters is how he's likely to govern if he's elected. And I think that there is another comparison to the Access Hollywood situation in that, like Donald Trump, Herschel Walker was not exactly thought to be, a choir boy prior to this. There have been a lot of kind of allegations of various kind of problematic things in his personal life that sort of dribbled out over the summer. And so I think a lot of Republicans had already kind of made their peace with those kinds of arguments. So I think it's likely that kind of greased the skids a little bit. That said, it's not necessarily the case that the outcome looks the same. Georgia's not a state where Republicans in the current moment are likely to be able to kind of stumble across the finish line and still do well. We saw that in 2020, where some of the questions about the election that you were alluding to in the previous segment essentially were enough to derail a couple of what otherwise looked like they would be pretty safe Republican Senate wins. And I think a lot of people in the state are worried about something like that right now, where it's not like this bleeds Herschel Walker of a ton of Republican support, but it hurts his ability perhaps to get over the kind of 48% of Republican support up to that magic 50 that he needs to beat Raphael Warnock in November.
Yeah, Andrew, I thought it was so interesting. So we have the evidence presented in the story, and there's a lot of it. Some would argue that, it kind of just relies on this anonymous source, this claim. Then you have the very, very vehement and adamant denial by the Walker camp. And then you have the spin and the fundraising off this. Help us tie all of that together, because this is such an interesting kind of course of events. There's the evidence, then there's the denial, and it seems like those two don't really matter much.
Yeah, and you could even see this a little bit from Herschel himself when he went on Sean Hannity last night, and he did deny that the accusations were true, but he spent a lot more time making the argument again and again that the seat really matters. What matters is taking back this seat for the people of Georgia. We can't jeopardize the seat. I mean, he flipped very quickly over to that argument because that's the argument that's going to be dispositive in the minds of his voters. There are going to be people who have questions about his personal life, and the Walker campaign and Republican strategists, Republicans nationally, are all hoping that essentially enough people will go along with that line that they're willing at least to suspend those questions because of the likelihood that he will be a reliable conservative vote. Now, the fundraising that you mentioned, the Walker campaign did put out today that they had I think one of their best days yet of fundraising off the back of this sort of thing. Obviously, anytime there's kind of notoriety we've seen in recent years, you do get a bit of a bump like that. It's not anything that's helping him catch up to Raphael Warnock's sort of built-in incumbency benefit, but obviously there is always in the Republican Party these days a certain amount of silver lining to these negative media stories when you can basically say, look, the media is out to get me, and doesn't that maybe signal that I'm the kind of person you want in charge?
Andrew, I want to put up on the screen here, this was the statement put out by the NRSC, and this was obtained by Josh Kraushaar there at Axios, and I want to just read it. It says, Democrats are losing in Georgia and are on the verge of losing the majority, so they and their media allies are doing what they always do, attack Republicans with innuendo and lies. Democrats and the media have tried to stir up nonsense about what has or hasn't happened in Herschel Walker's past because they want to distract from what's happening in the president. I just want to read that in part. So does it surprise you that so many prominent Republican groups, especially related to taking back, the Senate majority, are not flinching? They're going all in and they're backing. They're not, taking out some of the money for these ad buys. They're not pulling support. They are coalescing around this as much as they can.
No, I mean, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest. If it were a smaller race, if it were a House race, if the Senate were closer, maybe you would see some of these things play a role in these groups' decision-making process. But the purpose of groups like the NRSC is to help Republicans retake the Senate. Herschel Walker is a huge part of basically every calculation for what that looks like in this unbelievably close midterm. There are no gimmies for Republicans this cycle, so it's not at all shocking. First, to see these groups, double down and have their guys back, and second, of course, to not dwell on the substance of the allegation. If you're explaining you're losing, especially this close to the actual voting day. And so, just trying to put the spotlight as ever right back on Biden and Raphael Warnock.
Yeah, and I want to talk about, Walker's stance on abortion, because we haven't really talked about that. He is, I would say, to the right of some, mainstream Republicans. He doesn't agree to exceptions for, rape or incest when it comes to the procedure of abortion. So you could argue he is very hard line. And then you get this evidence in this story from the Daily Beast. Obviously, it's, and some would say it's kind of plain as day hypocrisy. And so, where do you think this story goes from here? You have sources in Georgia. You have sources into the Walker camp. I don't know about the Warnock camp, but how are they going to, dog this question throughout the next 35 days?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, and good to bring it up that Herschel Walker is not just an outlier sort of among Republicans writ large right now, but particularly among these Senate Republicans who are running in these spotlight swing state districts, just swing states. You compare him to someone like Blake Masters, who essentially has come out for nothing more than basically a third trimester abortion ban. You even compare him to somebody like Lindsey Graham, who put forward what was considered in a lot of the press kind of a radical 15-week ban. Herschel Walker wants a complete ban on abortion at both the state and federal level, and has said so very plainly. So there is a pain point in terms of the hypocrisy angle, of course, but there's also Democrats want to run on abortion in Georgia. It's a issue that plays very well for them, but an issue that isn't necessarily front of voters' minds. So the biggest benefit to Raphael Warnock out of this story might be more of the bank shot, where it's not necessarily that a ton of voters are necessarily going to burn their Herschel Walker ballot after hearing this story, but anything that brings that issue to the forefront in the race's closing days is a thing Democrats will be happy to see. Yeah,
Andrew, stick around with us. We want to just play part of that interview as he did appear on Sean Hannity's program last night. This is about a 4-minute soundbite, and then we'll get you to respond.
Walker, let's start with the Daily Beast, Herschel. I mean, serious accusations that in 2009 that you paid for an abortion. First question, do you know the woman that is making this allegation?
I have no idea, but it is a flat-out lie. And now you know how important this seat is. This seat is very important, that they'll do anything to win this seat, lie, because they want to make it by everything else except what the true problems that we have in this country is. This inflation, the border wide open, crime. They don't want to talk about that. So they're making up lies now because they need this Georgia seat. So I'm going to encourage anyone out there, let's not let them take this seat. If you can go to teamherschel.com, let's not let them take this seat, because if they take this seat, we won't recognize this country tomorrow. Because right now, for them to come out with total lies, I think that's not right.
Let me ask you this. So they're claiming that on September 12th of 2009, that the woman has a receipt for an abortion. They're claiming that 5 days later, on September 17th, you sent a $700 check, and that you sent it in a get well card. The get well card, it looks like it's included with your signature in the article. Have you seen it, and is that your signature?
I haven't seen it, but I can tell you, I send out so many get well, send out so much of anything. But I can tell you right now, I never asked anyone to get an abortion. I never paid for an abortion, and it's a lie. And I'm going to continue to fight. I tell you, that's what they want. They want this seat. But right now, they've energized me even more. And they're not going to take the seat. So they better work it even harder, because they've jeopardized my kids. They've jeopardized my family. They think they can threaten me. They think they can scare me. Right now, all that done is it's energized me more that I'm going to fight and win this seat for the great people of Georgia, because to have someone in the seat that lies to the people shouldn't be in the seat as a senator.
What about the $700 check? Is there anybody you can remember sending that much money to?
Well, I send money to a lot of people, and that's what's so funny. And let's go back to my part. I do scholarship for kids. I give money to people all the time because I'm always helping people, because I believe in being generous. God has blessed me, and I want to bless others. And I got into this race because I'm a Christian. I love the Lord Jesus Christ, and I always tell everyone that no weapon formed against me shall prosper. So whoever has been out there want to lie on Herschel Walker, you're lying on the wrong one. It's best that you to go somewhere else, because I'm going to win this seat for the great people of Georgia, because Georgia deserves to have a senator that trusts in the Georgia people and not no one that trusts in Joe Biden like Senator Warnock does.
You seem at peace. You don't seem like you're letting this bother you. I think a lot of people would let it bother them. Do you just accept that this is a political season, this is what happens? Well, no, I knew what I was getting into when I signed up. The first thing somebody said is that, oh, you're conservative, you're black. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with I love America. It has to do, I love the Constitution. I believe in the lower taxes. I believe in law and order. I believe in the people. They want to continue to tell us that we're a racist country full of racist people. We're a bad country. And I'm saying we're a good country. We're full of good people. But what we got to do is we got to come together. I believe in unity. I believe in bringing people together. And in that article that the guy wrote from the New York Times, he talked like we're separated in Wrightsville. I want to tell you right now, Wrightsville is one of the friendliest towns in the state of Georgia. And the people get along. Yes, years ago, and I talked about it. Years ago, there was problems in that town. There was a lot of problems. But today that town gets along, people love each other. So for a New York reporter to come and try to divide us, because that's what the left is good at, dividing us, I think is a shame, it's disgusting. And I can promise you the Wrightsville people are upset, because they made me upset. They're not going to divide my family. Herschel Walker, thank you for being with us. 36 days to go. All right.
Okay, back here with Andrew Egger from the Dispatch. Andrew, it was really interesting to watch that. Back in 2016, a lot of prominent Republicans, looked the other way as a lot of these unsavory details about Donald Trump's past came to light, although a lot of that was previously known. And that's what you're kind of seeing here, which leads some to say, why wasn't the vetting, good enough on this candidate? That's some of the major criticism Herschel Walker has gotten since he's been running, is that, he wasn't the strongest possible candidate to take on someone like Raphael Warnock. What do you make of that? Should there have been more vetting involved in this?
I think that is becoming a really interesting question, right? I mean, Herschel Walker sort of alone out of all of these Trump-endorsed candidates who have in these Senate swing seats, who have shown to have one weakness or another. He's not a person that Trump fought Mitch McConnell to get elected. McConnell also endorsed Herschel Walker. So it's possible that if you had seen sort of a different type of Republican primary where it was more hotly contested, where sort of the eye of Sauron of Mitch McConnell and his whole team had been kind of digging through some of this stuff, maybe you would have seen something like that earlier. And it's just because of the nature of this particular primary that it was kind of a foregone conclusion. It does seem very plausible that in a very slightly different universe, you'd have a different outcome in this coming out earlier.
Yeah, Andrew, just last point, I want to put up this tweet from Herschel Walker's son, and that's what really, to me, is kind of the saddest part about this story, is this really public spat, this back and forth between father and son. No one ever really wants to see that, no matter what your politics is. But he is being very outspoken. That is one of the liabilities that you were talking about at the beginning of our discussion. All of this from Christian Walker.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you and I probably both feel a little unsettled talking about this kind of family stuff. The reason why it is so interesting, it's not just a salacious thing. I mean, Christian Walker is, for lack of a better term, sort of a conservative MAGA sphere influencer. He has hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter and on TikTok. He's a huge fan of Ron DeSantis. He's a right-wing guy. And so the fact that he is not only Herschel Walker's son coming out and knifing him like this, but also a guy who has no political incentive to come out and try to tip things in favor of Warnock. I mean, it's a whole mess. And yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing where you'd wish the family had a more forgiving, less public avenue to work these things out in.
Yeah. Andrew Egger, thank you so much for that discussion. We're going to bring you on again. We'll see how this unfolds over the next couple of days. If it has staying power, like you and I were talking about, like that Access Hollywood tape back in 2016. Andrew, thanks so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.